If you take any metal system which is subjected to the solid state joining uh, using either application of just deformation or force or the deformation coupled with the heat to develop the metallurgical joint. Certain things which will definitely be happening and that will be leading to the change. So change in basically the base or parent metal. These changes will be happening in both weld nugget zone, or you can say simple joint interface. Okay, so this is one, and the second is the depending upon the case, there may be the formation of the heat affected zone, which may be narrow or wide. That is a different thing. So how to understand about these changes which will be taking place and their effect on the joint characteristics. So what you have to see is whenever the joint is developed, you know, this, so either in situ heat generation or heat is um, applied externally, or it is generated during the joining itself. So in all these cases, you know, so this is your the either joint interface or the weld nugget, and whatever heat will be generated due to the thermal conducting nature of the metal, there will be a rise in temperature of the parent metal. Hmm. Depending upon the amount of heat supplied, or you can say generated, both are the possibilities, and depending upon the thermophysical properties thermophysical properties of the metal which is being joined, especially your K, thermal conductivity of the metal. So these are the two important things that will be governing the change in temperature of metal at any location, at a particular point close to either in the weld or close to the joint interface. Change in the temperature of the metal in or you can say the close to the joint interface or weld nugget as per the case. So this change in temperature is basically responsible for all these changes which will be taking place both in the weld nugget or joint interface and the heat affected zone. So the thing which becomes crucial here is the temperature rise and the time for which high temperature is retained. So these are the two different aspects, and both you can get where from, you can easily get from the weld thermal cycle. So I say it may not be just of our importance what is the peak temperature. So the temperature and time. So this is certainly this is the peak temperature, but this may not be of a great interest. It may be possible, like we may be more interested what is the minimum temperature above which the property alteration or structural alteration takes place. So the minimum temperature above which no the microstructure or property alteration takes place, occurs. Okay, so any zone which is heated above this particular temperature, there will be change in the structure and properties, mechanical properties, corrosion properties, which may be unfavorable as well. So these the peak temperature is one, but the what is the minimum temperature or above which whenever the metal is heated, it is affected. Okay, so that is really will be determining the width or the distance up to which the metal will be experiencing the change. Okay, so say let's take this example. Okay, this is the joint interface or the nugget. So here your temperature, another location, say different locations. So temperature here is say 1200, here it is 1000, here 800, 600, 400, and say 200. Okay, so increasing the distance, reducing the peak temperature. So how can you say that which temperature is crucial and above which the change in structure will be taking place? Any idea? Let's say for iron system or for aluminum or for copper, where from we can get idea of the minimum temperature above which these changes will be occurring. This is the question for you. How can we determine the temperature value, minimum temperature value, above which there will be microstructural changes in a metal, and that in turn will be affecting the properties of the base metal or the parent metal itself. Okay, yeah, anybody would like to say something on this in response to this question? Yeah, this is one recrystallization temperature, right? Say for iron it is 400, right? So the one response here is the recrystallization temperature. Okay. Any other aspect? You see, whenever the recrystallization occurs, your old grains are converted into the new grains, but maybe the nature of grains or the type of the grains or the phase of the grains, that will remain the same, isn't it? There is no phase change. Maybe you get the new grains. This is one change that will be happening above the recrystallization temperature. These are just fresh grains of the same phase. The second thing, you are able to realize some kind of the recovery or annihilation. That is the loss of the dislocations. So above this particular temperature, recrystallization temperature, these two things or changes will be taking place, but these may not be able to bring up the major or the significant change in the properties. It will still be there. There may be minor drop. You can say if earlier here it was, then there will be minor, say 600 to 580. This kind of the minor drop in the properties can take place due to the recovery, especially, which is occurring, or the formation of the new grains. Any other point that will be bringing the major change in the metals? Yeah, because the no, you see what we are talking of, like what is the minimum temperature that will be causing now major change. Now recrystallization temperature is one aspect. Okay, I said it affects, but its effect is marginal. Okay, but whenever you get the metal heated to the different temperature values, there will be the different kind of the changes in the metals will be taking place. So what will be the next temperature value and how to identify that? I just think because this and this is true for all kind of metals. No, this is not just for one type of metal. This is true for all types of the metals. So let's say if you take anything, okay. If the temperature above the recrystallization temperature value is maintained for very long time, can you anticipate any change in the metal? Anybody can respond. Let's say for steel it is say 400, right, recrystallization temperature, and if say 500 temperature is maintained for 20 hours, for 500 hours, what kind of the changes are expected? What is the next stage of the recrystallization? The point is very simple. No, oh, that is phase change. That needs further very high temperature. We are not talking about at all AC1 or the Solvus lines, etc. We are not talking about that. We'll come to that stage also. But here, what we are saying, just recrystallization, and when little higher than recrystallization temperature is maintained, so higher than recrystallization temperature for longer times, then what kind of change will be occurring? This is very simple. It is the grain growth that occurs. So when the high temperature, even when there is no major change in the phase, the grain growth occurs. So that will further be as per the your Hall patch relationship. This will further compromising or lowering the especially the mechanical performance, right? So this is the second thing. First, the recrystallization temperature, recrystallization, and then little higher temperature when it is maintained for longer periods, the grain growth. Apart from new grains, now you are getting the larger or coarser grains. Okay. Third thing, when you find the temperatures at which now the change in phase has started, change in phase is beginning. Now there are multiple possibilities related with depending upon the metal, like as you said, pearlite may transform into the austenite, or your theta double dash, theta dash kind of the precipitates in precipitation hardening otherwise, they start getting dissolved, they get unstabilized. This is called reversion. When the precipitates start getting dissolved, you get the reversion. Okay, so the change in phase is one thing. Now this unstable phases unstable at a high temperature depending upon the cooling rate may form different things. That is a second thing. Okay, now the change in phase at what temperature this will be beginning. Say for aluminium, maybe it is around 150 to 200. For magnesium also maybe around 140 to 160. For steel, what is the temperature at which these changes occurs or start taking place? You tell me. The temperature at which the change in phase starts. This is a very tricky question. Please be patient, think coolly, and then respond. Because this will dictate, this will tell you, yeah. What did you say? No, this is this is one aspect where we say that the pearlite or ferrite or your cementite start getting transformed into the austenite. It is fine. This is just one. but this is not the perfect answer. This is not 100% correct, because otherwise this would have been the only temperature at above which we would have been getting the heat affected zone, right? But we get the heat affected zone even at much lower temperatures. So the zones which are heated to the much lower temperatures, even then we get it. So any further idea on this aspect, what I just said now, even these phase changes can start occurring even at lower temperatures. You tell me, any heat treatment which is done below the AC1 kind of temperature, no, lower critical temperature. Na? AC1 is the lower critical temperature in iron carbon diagram. And what is the heat treatment where you get the phase transformation even at a temperature lower than the lower critical temperature? You let me know. This is called tempering. You know it. You know, you doing it from 300 to 650 degrees centigrade. So what you get? Your austenite gets transformed into the softer phases, or no, it may, you see, there is a very wide range, say from 300 to 650, right? So that will be causing lot of change in the your hardness or in your toughness, like this. So hardness will be coming down and toughness will be going up. And this is happening because of the transformation of the martensite. Maybe your ferrite will be forming, no, alpha, or maybe your Fe3C will be formed. So, or your low carbon martensite is being formed. So, the various kind of the changes will be taking place whenever your steel is getting heated in the range of say 300 to 650 or even 700, you find there is a change of phase. So the point here is, when this will be this, when you will be coming across this situation, you let me know. See, you are joining a steel, right, which has been subjected to the heat treatment of quenching and tempering. Tempering has been done up to 400 degrees centigrade, say for half an hour. Whenever this steel is heated above the 400 degrees centigrade, it gets over tempered. Over tempering will be causing the increased, further lower carbon martensite, increased formation of the alpha and iron carbon cementite. So that is going to deliver you what? Further lower hardness, lower strength, of course little higher toughness, that is fine. So you are going to get the compromised properties in the heat affected zone in a quenched and a tempered steel which has been subjected to the tempering at 400. So the HAZ will be dictated by the tempering temperature in these steels. If it is simple plain carbon steel, maybe your lower critical temperature of 730 degrees centigrade value is fine. But the same is not true for the steels which have been subjected to the quenching and tempering. And that is why you might have heard the steels, whenever they are welded in QNT conditions, they experience the softening in the heat affected zone. And that is why it becomes important to perform the post weld heat treatments to restore the properties. Even you weld the thin sheet of 2 mm using the laser, you will find the softening in HAZ, which is not so common in otherwise normal steel, because otherwise normal cases what you get, you get a hardening because of the high temperature followed by rapid cooling leading to the martensitic transformation in plain carbon steels. So the point which becomes of the greater interest here is what is the condition in which it is to be welded? It is to be joined. Okay, so if it is simple plain carbon steel in normalized or annealed condition, it's fine. It is 730 above which these changes, major changes will be taking place. But if it is in Q&T condition, it is the temperature of tempering that will be dictating the temperature above which the change in microstructure, change in mechanical properties will be taking place. So it is not necessary that the steel heat affected zone will always be hardened. These steels, there are few category of the steels which experiences the softening as well. And whenever you perform the tensile test, the failure will occur from the minimum hardness zone. Okay, so here in this case, the minimum hardness zone is, so failure will occur from the HAZ. So the failure location itself will indicate where is the weak location. What is the location which needs to be addressed? What is the location which needs attention? Okay. So I think I have already talked a lot. So as I said, in aluminium and magnesium alloys, which are say precipitation hardenable alloys, so this reversion and the dissolution of the precipitates will be occurring at these temperatures. So as and when they are heated above these temperatures, you will find there is a change in property. Okay, so I think I have talked enough. The recrystallization temperature is 1, and if the high temperature is maintained for long, you get the grain growth, and the temperature at which the change in phase is taking place, which will depend upon the metal system, the condition of the alloy. So that's why I said it is a very tricky thing. The temperature at which change in phase will be taking place, that will depend upon the alloy composition, condition of the steel or the metal which is being considered, whether it is in the Q&T conditions or normalized condition, annealed condition, tempered condition. So based on the condition, likewise in the aluminium or precipitation hardenable alloys, it is in T4 condition, T6 condition or annealed condition. So it depends. The temperatures at which the phase change will be occurring, which will be affecting the mechanical property, that will depend upon the alloy composition. Okay, this is one thing. The second thing, why we are worried so much about the temperature and the time for time of the high temperature or high temperature retention period. Why we are concerned about this? We didn't talk anything about the time so far. Any thought on this? What is the relevance or importance of the time here? Probably because the time was not enough for dissipation of heat, right? And rise in temperature. Similarly, in metals, if you just pass the things or heat source very quickly, then maybe rise in temperature is just for say 500 degrees centigrade just for 2 seconds, or it is for 60 seconds. What difference will come and why will it come at all? Any thought on this? So that is why I said, you see, as compared to the casting, the welding is a very short period activity, where like say a typical TIG weld solidifies in just say 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, like that. It doesn't take long. But if you take off castings, then maybe they will take 2 minutes, 3 minutes and long. So the point here is the kind of cooling rates and the kind of high temperature. You just heat it in no time, then how much it retains, high temperature is retained, how long the high temperature is retained. If the cooling rate is fast, high temperature is retained for shorter period. and if the cooling is slow, high temperature is retained for longer period. I hope that is clear. So in laser welding, what we are doing, we are providing lot of heat in very lot of heat because of the high power density, achieving the desired melting and then moving the heat source. So in this process, even the metal in the vicinity of the weld is not able to get the enough temperature rise, one, and the two, rise in temperature even if there is high, then it is for very shorter period. So what the role the time is playing here? Yeah, tell me from this materials point of view. No. What I am saying is the time aspect, the relevance of time in, you see, joining, especially with regard to the change in HZ or in the weld nugget, right? So how it is relevant? Let's say in one case the thermal cycle is like this, in another case thermal cycle is like this, and in both the cases the metal is same. So in one case you are getting the exposure of high temperature for this much period, which may be 50 seconds, and for another thermal cycle this is just say of 10 seconds. So what the difference will come and why it will come at all? High temperature retention period. So there are two things. One is, you might have heard about higher the temperature, shorter the time you need for change, isn't it? This you might have heard about this. No? Higher, because your because your everything will be taking less time. So where from it is coming? It is coming from the simple logic of the diffusion. You know, the diffusion is a time and temperature and time based phenomena, based, right? So higher the temperature, higher will be the diffusion. But things to diffuse, it needs time. Maybe it needs less time, that is fine. So the thing is, higher the temperature, lesser the time it needs to diffuse the things, to desterilize the things, to dissolve the things. Okay. So means it takes less time to have a particular kind of the metallurgical change when the temperature is high, while it takes longer when the temperature is low for completing the same diffusion. So the point here is very simple. In all these metallurgical transformation, except your thermal transformation like martensite, those transformations which are diffusion based, most of the metallurgical transformations are diffusion based, and the diffusion is a time and temperature based activity. Higher the temperature, faster will be the diffusion, lesser will be the time it will be taking to achieve the desired change. On the other hand, lower the temperature, longer the time it will be taking to complete the desired change. Okay, so this is the point here. If this point, this temperature is fixed, so in welding, you know, this region is experiencing the temperature of say 1000 to 1200, right? And this region is experiencing the temperature of say 500 to 600 degrees centigrade, right? So now you see, there is, the temperature is very high, but even if the temperature is very high, short stay may be working. On the other hand, when the temperature is low, even long stay may not be bringing the major change. Okay, so this is a kind of conflicting situation. In one side you have the higher temperature but for shorter period, in other side you are having the lower temperatures but for longer period. So you see from the diffusion and metallurgical transformation point of view what is more important. I'll show you one more interesting diagram related with the iron only and its transformation. So here if I plot the temperature and here the time relationship. So you know typical steel what will have, if it is plain carbon steel, say plain carbon steel having just say 0.3% carbon, or it can take say 1.2% carbon. These are the two scenarios. So in this case what you will have in steel at room temperature, just ferrite and perlite, right? These two. But if you consider this situation, what you will have, your cementite and perlite, these two. But if you take a simple Ly steel, say having chromium, maybe tungsten and 0.2% carbon, what you will have in your microstructure, there may be ferrite, there may be perlite, there may be your Ly carbides, okay, and so say these are the phases. And when you have tungsten carbide, chromium carbide, all these are very stable, so they don't decompose easily even at a higher temperature. So I'll plot. When you are working with a plain carbon steel, you are having simple your alpha plus perlite. Say take example of the Ly carbide. So I will write AC. So this is the typical situation at a room temperature. All these phases are there. So when you give the exposure at a higher temperature, what will be transforming first? Your perlite will be transforming and you will be left with the Ly carbide, right? Now the next zone comes in the after this one, which will be transforming alpha plus Ly carbide. Your alpha will be getting lost and here you will be getting gamma, that is the austenite. Now next stage is you are left with the Ly carbide plus gamma, right? Now you have the Ly carbides to decompose. So Ly carbides will decompose. So you will be left with the gamma plus inhomogeneous composition, because wherever your Ly carbide was there or iron carbide was there, you will find the heterogeneity. In those regions wherever the carbide particles were there, you will have the higher concentration of the carbon as compared to the other zones. If you have to continue further, you have to get the homogeneous austenite. So you see what are the stages and how they are being achieved. So initially for a given temperature like this, no, initially in a steel, first your perlite will transform, then alpha will transform, then Ly carbide will transform into the austenite, and then it will be leading to the formation of inhomogeneous austenite, and then it will be leading to the then further continued high temperature exposure for longer time, it will be leading to the homogeneous austenite. The point here is a steel will respond according to its composition only if you have the homogeneous austenite. You know, during the heat treatment you might have said like steel is of 0.3% carbon or 0.5% carbon. It will behave according to its composition only if whole of the alloying elements, whole of the carbon content has been dissolved completely into the austenite, and that too in homogeneous manner. It takes long to reach the homogeneous austenitic state. So it may be like say 30 minutes or 1 hour depending upon the alloy composition. If it is just plain plain carbon steel, that stage will be achieved earlier, and if it is having the alloy carbides, then it will take longer time. That is why when you have the alloy steel, it takes long to form the homogeneous austenite and then achieve the desired hardness after the hardness and strength after the heat treatment. This is one aspect. The second is the time required is getting reduced with the increase of temperature. If you are here, it will be taking lesser time, while at lower temperature it would have been taking the longer time. So the time and temperature relationship, you see, this is at lower temperature and this is at a higher temperature. So at a higher temperature you are able to achieve the homogeneous austenitic state much earlier. Now come to this again, the joining here. So here you have a temperature of 1200 degrees centigrade next to the joint interface, and while away how much you have, say you have 700 degrees centigrade or 800 degrees centigrade. So here you are going to take much longer time for achieving the homogeneous austenitic state, and here it is shorter time. So the point here is you get the homogeneous austenite here very quickly, and here in other zones it will be the partial, say it will be intercritical zone or it will be the partial dissolved zone stage, like that. So here you may get very easily the hard and brittle martensite. On the other hand, here you may not get any major change except that has happened because of the recovery and recrystallization in simple carbon and alloy steels if it was not Q and T condition, if it was not in Q and T condition. Okay. So I hope now you would have understood the importance of the time. Why the time is important? Time and temperature both are interlinked. Higher the time, higher the temperature, lesser the time it takes to achieve the desired metallurgical change. So about this I have already talked, no need to say. There are 6 types of the metal strengthening mechanisms. So these 4, they respond in one way, means these strengthening mechanisms are sensitive to the heat. These are not that sensitive to the heat dispersion, hardening and solid solution strengthening. Okay, so if you take about this I have already just explained. If you are working with the joining where there is a heat source, if you take 2 different locations at different distances, so one which is at a closer distance as compared to the other one, A is closer. So what you will notice, A is this is the curve thermal cycle for A. You are having the higher peak temperature, higher heating rate, that is what you can see from the slope, and higher cooling rate. Okay, and maybe high temperature retention as well. On the other hand, the one which is located at a farther away from the joint location, you will find the lower peak temperatures and maybe higher temperature at the duration of the high temperature. Maybe here it is more, it depends upon the, like say, how the curve is coming. So that is what you can see here. The temperature above which a particular temperature of interest, if you see, say for a steel 400, so at 3 there may not be any recrystallization. Above this there will be recrystallization, and you see above 730 degrees centigrade, only this is the region which the temperature of the zones which are heated above this temperature will be experiencing. So the region which are very close to the the weld nugget zone, they will be experiencing the metallurgical transformation, and below that there may not be major, but there will be grain coarsening. Say here, there may be grain coarsening. There may be just even formation of the newer grains at two location. This is what just have talked irrespective of the metal. Okay. Now, as I said, the heat that we are supplying is a problem. More heat we supply, more the problems. Okay. And what is governing that heat? More heat, sorry, more problems. Problems of the HZ and the weld nugget heads itself. Okay, so if you see this one, when your the power density of the process increases like this from your gas to the laser, this is not related, but I'll come how the power density is important. When the power density increases, your net heat requirement actually decreases. Why? This is what you can see here. When the power density is high like this, it takes less time to deliver the heat desired for desired change. On the other hand, when the power density is low, it takes very long time to deliver the desired heat, and at the same time, since lot of heat is dissipated, so you need extra heat as well. So the point here is, in these two, this diagram, you see, showing the power density versus welding time relationship. In this one, if you see, let me in this diagram, if you see, when you are working with the low power density, you need to supply extra heat. So with the low power density, lot of heat is to be supplied as compared to the high power density processes. On the other hand, if you see, say for gas welding, the heat supplied is more. That is why the metal experiences more thermal damage as compared to the high energy density processes where thermal damage is minimum. So with the increase of power density, thermal damage to the weld as well as to the HZ is minimized. Okay, so we always make efforts. So lesser the heat input, lesser will be the thermal damage. Okay, this is the simple point. So if you see here, this is the typical example of the solid state joining of friction piston welding. Say for these different tool geometries having the different tool pin profiles, how the change in the heat input like kilojoule per mm will be taking place with the change of the welding speed, say from 350 to 500. For the different tool pin profiles, how the heat input is changing. So it is in the range of say 0.5 to 0.8. You know, just to give the idea, the low heat input process, if you talk of, if your just a minute, I'm not able to write. In your normal these processes, the heat input here may be like say 3 to 4 kilojoule per mm. Arc welding, maybe say it's common like your 1 to 2 kilojoule. There is again range, very wide range, 1 to say kilojoule per mm. And here for the high energy density, maybe say 0.2 to 0.5 kilojoule per mm. So the heat input is changing significantly. Say for your GTAW, it is around say 1 or 0.8 kilojoule. For submerged arc welding, maybe 4 or 5 kilojoule per mm also. So it depends on the process. So if you compare these processes as compared to the solid state joining process like SSJ, it is in a band of like say very low heat input, say 0.5 to say 0.8 for the different tool morphologies. Okay, so the point here is the lower the heat input, if you reduce the heat input, your the changes which will be occurring in the weld nugget zone or in your heat effector zone, those will be minimized. I think I have shown this diagram to you. Yeah, this diagram. Yeah. So if you take, this is very general diagram. If you take any welding process, you must supply some minimum amount of heat to develop a sound weld joint. That's called optimum one. If the heat input is less than that, then you'll find there are a lot of discontinuities, lack of bonding, many stress regions in the joint, at the joint interface itself. If heat input is more, then again it will be leading to the increased thermal damage to the metal, compromised mechanical properties due to the grain coarsening, and the increased residual stresses. So both are not good, neither too low or nor too high. You have to ensure that there is an optimum level of the heat input so that the discontinuities are avoided. At the same time, your the metallurgical properties are also not compromised. Okay, so this is what I was saying. It is, so if the thermal damage is getting, if you reduce the heat input, the thermal damage is reduced. Basically this side increasing thermal damage and this side reducing thermal damage. Okay, so thermal damage to the weld and the heat affected zone is minimized with reduction in heat input. So that is directly linked with the heat affected zone size. When the heat input is more, your HZ is very wide, because up to the greater extent the metal is heat is dissipated to the underlying base metal, and that in turn increases the width of the heat affected zone. You have higher temperatures for longer periods, and that in turn will be leading to the increased width of heat affected zone. On the other hand, you get the narrow heat. It is always there. This, it may be narrow or it may be very wide. It may be 50 say it may be 10 to 15 mm also, or it may be just 2 to 3 mm also. So it depends. It's very problematic because you come across many undesirable metallurgical changes which will be leading to the corrosion loss, change in mechanical properties in the form of hardening or softening both. It may be embrittlement, it may be loss of strength. So both are not good. So when embrittlement is taking place, then that will be leading to the increased cracking tendency. So these are the some of the issues which are always there whenever there is a heat generation in the metals during the welding. Yeah. So yeah, I think this will give you some idea of the kind of changes that are experienced in a metal when it is subjected to the high temperature exposure. So where from it starts, you see, whenever you give the high temperature exposure, say, right, 200, 400, 600, 800, what is happening? Initially it is coming with the recovery, then there is a recrystallization, and then there is a grain growth. So in the recovery phase, there is no major change in the grain structure or morphology. Your what do you say? Only the loss of dislocation or annihilation is taking place. Here you will find that some kind of the change in the grain structure is taking place, and your all earlier elongated grains have lost gradually. So it starts, new grains starts beginning, and then they will be completely changed with the further increase of temperature. If even this temperature is maintained for long, you can get that. This refined grain structure is further you see, whatever you have got the newer grains, this starts growing, and so the grain growth takes place at a higher temperature. Okay, so there are three stages: recovery, recrystallization, and grain growth. Okay, so how the change in the grain size is taking place, that is what also you can see. When the new grains start form, gradually there will be increase in the size of the grains. That is what you can see from this plot. So the grain growth starts taking place. So if you take of any metal here, depending upon the temperature, you may be coming across the different temperatures. Okay, so that may be in form of, like, say, that may be leading to the just recovery or recrystallization on grain growth. So as per the temperature, so here you will be coming across the grain growth, here you will maybe recovery or recrystallization zone, here maybe recovery zone or unaffected zone. Okay, unaffected zone, right? And how the change in temp properties will be taking place, that is what you can also see. The ductility increase and the drop in strength is marginal. So blue line is indicating the strength, and this yellowish and reddish line is indicating the is ductility. So marginal change in property in recovery phase, and significant change is taking place in your recrystallization, say like this, and then grain growth. And the extent of change may be further higher when we talk of it depends, like which kind of the metal is being considered, whether it is copper or aluminium, or it is iron, pure iron, or it is hardenable metal. So these are the trends are indicative in nature, but this is the kind of the trend in general which takes place. So you will be getting the improved ductility after the recrystallization, and the grain growth and all that will be having the marginal effect on the strength and ductility. Okay, so this is where I will be stopping. I'll continue with this in the subsequent lectures. This is very crucial from developing the understanding from the heat affected zone point of view, and the way by which the properties of the heat affected zone are affected in different metals. Okay,